Hi, my name is Gareth Truscott. I'm here today interviewing Rick, who is a painter and decorator. So how long have you been in business, Rick?
I've been in business now for 10 years.
And how did you get into painting and decorating?
I got into painting and decorating as the result of not having any qualifications, being released from prison and desperately needing a job. I answered an advert for somebody looking for an experienced decorator when I wasn't particularly an experienced decorator. I had done maybe a month's worth of work as a painter and decorator with a friend and my dad years and years ago. But I was so desperate to go to work that I was happy to try anything. And the fella that I was working for, he had 40 flats to decorate and employed maybe 70 people. And he gave me a flat on price and he said, "This is your flat and it's worth," I think it was 400 quid. So I went in and I decorated. It took me 2 weeks and he come and looked at it and he said, "You're not a decorator, are you?" And I said, "No." And I put my hands up and he laughed. He said to me, "It's up to you. You can either put it right or you can leave now and not get paid." So I spent 7 weeks decorating that one flat, asking people, other decorators that were there decorating their own flats, their own price flats. I was asking them for advice. How do I do this? What do I do here? What's the best way for me to do this? And I sat in a canteen and listened to two old-time decorators discuss the best way to work from top to bottom in a house. And I picked, that works for me, that would go well. And I put the flat right. It took me 7 weeks.
So you basically went in without any training, chucked yourself in the deep end and just winged it?
That's exactly what I done, yeah. And I have to say I was incredibly fortunate. I bumped into the right people at the right time.
So do you think that's how most people will get into painting and decorating?
No, I don't. No, yeah.
So what would you say the advantages of being a painter and decorator are, and being self-employed as well?
I had to be self-employed. No one was going to give me a job. I'd spent 8.5 years in prison for a variety of crimes, and I don't believe that anyone would have given me a job, so I needed to work for myself.
So the disadvantages of being self-employed, what would they be to you?
The disadvantage is obviously that my income's not guaranteed. I need to be self-motivated. I need to be able to ask for help when needed and try and find the right way to go about getting that help. So
say now I've just come out of being released from prison and I wanted to start off as a painter and decorator. What steps would you take other than maybe yours, you've given an example of yours, maybe you've got a bit more experience now and recommend another way for somebody else?
The first thing I believe someone would need to do is, if they was going to start out as a decorator, would be, after they've obviously bought their equipment, would be to do maybe a local mail shop, write a little leaflet, express that you're a local decorator. Lots of family homes would prefer to employ a local person, and deliver them locally through the doors.
What about gaining experience? Could you recommend anything?
After training, because I believe really people should be trained in a profession before they go into it the way I did. After training, I think most of what you accomplish is on the job training,
right.
and you pick that up by getting work.
Would you recommend maybe doing work for like friends and family or something like that, sort of free work to maybe?
Yeah, any work's good. Any work that you can get some word of mouth kind of advertising from, because that's the best sort of advertising. Any bit of work that somebody can recommend, you've done this and you've done a very good job.
So what mistakes would someone make maybe setting up a painting and decorating business?
The mistakes that I made when I first started, I wasn't honest enough with the tax man. I didn't understand the pitfalls of working with the Inland Revenue and paying my own tax, because obviously as a self-employed person I have to pay my own tax. Mm-hmm. So my advice to somebody doing it now would be get an accountant straight away and split the money that you earn so that you're in a position at the end of the year to pay your tax bill. That would be the first and most important mistake that I made. Right,
so do you have an accountant now?
Yeah, absolutely I do, yeah.
And how do you keep your files?
We keep all of our files. We have an office. Things have progressed quite well for us over the last. When I started doing this, it worked from a bedroom in my house, and I had a little table with a chest of drawers next to it, and in the drawers I split into 3 things. I had a quotes file, an invoices file, and a pending file, and in my pending file was work we was doing. So everything was small. Now we have an office where I can go in and sit, and we have a filing cabinet, and my accountant sat at the table at the desk next to me. So it's very straightforward now.
Well, so at the end of the year, when you had your 3 piles of receipts, you just took them to your accountant and they were happy with?
Well, yeah. When I first started, I would go to my accountant with a carrier bag full of receipts, like for food, because you can claim for your food, for your lunch, and for petrol, and for clothes for work and all of that kind of stuff, and I would just dump a bag on my accountant's table, and they'd shake their head, and I'd walk out. But my accountants, I have to say, have always been very good.
Very supportive.
Very.
So what about competition? When you first started out, did you find any debate competitors in the area, or did you just go for it?
When I first started, I didn't consider my competition. All I was interested in was the work that I could get. As we grew, I then decided it was time to find out the best way for me to take my competition's work. And so yeah, I found out what they do, what they don't do, what areas they're weak in, what areas that I would be able to exploit, who their clients were, and the best way for me to approach them.
What sort of areas did you look to cover when you first started out?
Well, when we first started, I was a domestic decorator. And as soon as I was in a position to take bigger work, we moved into the commercial market, which is where we sort of put most of our work now.
Mm-hmm. So what did you do for travel and transport?
I bought a van. The first flat that I was talking about earlier that I decorated, as soon as I was paid for that, I bought a van. For the 2 weeks prior to that, one of the blokes on site gave me a lift in. I needed to have transport.
Right.
It's very difficult to do this job without transport.
Mm-hmm. And storage as well? Where did you store your tools? And
I used to store my tools in the back of my van. As a decorator, you don't need a lot of tools. A bag of brushes, a few rollers, a pole, some sculls, some dust sheets, a roof rack for my ladders. As we got a bit bigger, we have a warehouse now.
Could you put an estimate on the cost of setting up? Like, for instance, how much did you spend to do the first flat?
You can get a decent painting kit from start to finish, including your PPE, your personal protective equipment, for about 250 quid. And that will give you a set of half a dozen brushes for emulsion, the same for gloss, the scuttles for your paint, your pole, your rollers, and a decent set of steps.
Right. Did you have £250 when you first started out?
No, I didn't. No, I think I borrowed it off my mum. If I'm honest, yeah, I did. I definitely borrowed it off my mum. Yeah.
Mm. So, with regard to the skills that you need to be a painter and decorator, being friendly with your customers, like, for example, training, what sort of skills do you recommend for a painter and decorator?
Sorry, could you repeat the question there?
Yeah. As with regard to the skills you need, both personal and training wise, which would you recommend to start off with? First of all, if you'd like to answer the personal.
Obviously, if you're working as a domestic decorator, you're going to be in somebody's house. So the people need to trust you. They need to know that they can go out and that you're not going to steal their TV. So you need to be able to present yourself as somebody who is honest. You need to be able to fill your clients with confidence in A, your ability, and B, that you're a decent kind of person. And you need to be able to stand up and do what you say you're going to do. It's no good, or I don't believe it's any good, saying I can decorate your house if you can't.
Right. If, say, for instance, like you did, you took on a job, got some money behind you, and then you wanted to take on some form of training, what would be the first step training-wise?
In Bristol, there are two. You through your local council. There, if you was to get in contact with your local council in any area, I'm sure they would be able to help. In Bristol, there's a training academy called Gordana. They train a variety of different trades. When we was in a position to look for apprentices, I went to the council and they pushed me towards Gordano, and I contacted them. They supply, it's not called YTS anymore, it's called apprenticeships now. They supply apprenticeships to people. So that's where I would go, looking for either to further qualifications for myself, I would go there, or if I was looking to get somebody who was newly qualified, I would go there.
Right, so when you started out, were you a one-man band, or did you need help from anybody else?
No, I worked purely on my own. I was a one-man band.
So when you went out and you got your first customers, what kind of customers did you have at first? Was it domestic?
It was all domestic. I done a mail shop. I sat at home and on a computer done a little A4 size. My name's Rick. My company's called Prism Decorators. We're a domestic, local. Just written a flyer out, just a decent flyer. I printed off 50 and I walked up and down some streets putting them through doors. Through the first 50, I don't think I got any work. For the next 200, I think I then got a batch of 200 and I got my first job. That paid for all of my advertising. And from there I got some word of mouth work, and that's where it sprung from.
So it's a case of just sticking at it.
Exactly that.
So now you've gone on to doing subcontract work.
Yeah.
How long did it take before that started to come through?
Probably about 3 years for me before I was in a position financially and with a decent enough reputation to start to branch out into the commercial market, because it's a very different market. The first thing is that I had to employ people. That was the next step, and so I in a conversation with a client whose house I was painting. They told me that they have a company that do office refit interior work, and we just got chatting, and he said to me, would you be interested in doing one of our refits? And I said yeah, and he said you won't be able to do it on your own, and as a result of the conversation with him, I started to take some work off of him, and within 2 years we had gone from being me to being 10 blokes doing nearly 400 grand a year.
That's fantastic. So what type of work came in at first? Was it painting, wallpapering? Could you describe to people what actually the first few jobs would have entailed?
Yeah, the first year solid, I didn't hang any wallpaper. It was all painting. It would be somebody would phone me up and they would say, "Can you come around and paint my bathroom ceiling? We've had a leak." And I would go in and I'd stain block the leak and I'd paint the ceiling. And the job may take me 2 or 3 hours or 2 days. And then the jobs just gradually evolved and got bigger until I was able to take on complete houses and then some new builds. And then, as I say, I moved into offices. And it was when we started doing offices that we started to do wallpaper.
Right, so if somebody did ask you, for instance, to wallpaper, how would you sort of dodge the work, so to speak? How would you politely refuse it?
Right, I've never dodged any work. The first bit of wallpapering that I got, because I didn't know how to hang wallpaper, the first bit of wallpapering I got, I went and found another decorator who did know how to hang wallpaper, and I said to him, "Do you want this work? I'll do it with you, and you can teach me how to put it up." And that's what we've done, and that's how I learned.
Well, so sort of free training.
Yeah.
Excellent. So visiting a potential client, they've called you and asked you to go round to make an estimate. Can you talk us through the process?
Yeah. When I first started to decorate, I worked on it. I decided that I needed a certain amount of money per day for my work. So I would go to a client and say, "This job's going to take 4 days. I want, for example, £100 a day plus materials." And that's how I would price my work. I would go in and I would estimate how long it would take, and I would do a deal based on that. As we've grown, I needed to be able to price differently. So now we price by the square metre. In order that, that's a different thing. I needed to research on the internet how to go about starting to price for that sort of work.
Right. Would you sort of aim at a lower price than if you overrun, kind of take that on the chin? Or what would be the best? Because you wouldn't want to overprice yourself, would you?
No, I think in the beginning, the most important thing is that I get what I'm worth, but don't take advantage. And that was the way it always was, you know. I know there are decorators that charge an awful lot more money than I do. But as long as I can pay my bills, I'm happy with that.
Excellent. So when you go on to say you've won the contract and you go in to start work that day, can you just talk us through a day of painting and decorating, about the work and the breaks you have and etc.?
Now or in the beginning?
Well, start from the beginning if you like.
Okay. In the beginning, I would pretty much do an 8 or 10 hour working day, and I wouldn't stop. I would go in and I would kill myself all day to get as much work done as possible. I was just so happy. I was so happy to be given the opportunity to go to work that I loved it. I loved going to work. As things got a little bit more structured and the company progressed, we started to employ people. Other people were not quite so happy to work a 10-hour day with no breaks as I was. So I found myself having to schedule in lunch breaks, tea breaks. So now we do an 8-hour working day, half hour for lunch, 2 15-minute breaks in the day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. Everybody knows where they stand then, and that's fine.
Right, so with regard to equipment and clothes, you mentioned earlier you're looking at £250 for the perfect, ideal setup.
Yeah.
But you could sort of beg and borrow,
Yeah.
but not steal, obviously.
Absolutely.
What about clothing or what have you?
Yeah, a painter and decorator's uniform, they're called whites. It's like a bib and brace.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy them from B&Q, about 12 quid. Obviously, it's recommended that you wear steel toe caps if you're on a building site. You have to. You also sometimes have to wear an hard hat and gloves and goggles. But if you're doing domestic work, you can pretty much get away with just your whites and a decent pair of shoes.
A very professional look.
Yeah.
So do you ever get asked to do other related work or unrelated, other building type work?
I do now, yeah. I quite often get asked when when we go to look at a job, can you do plastering? Can you do electrics? Can you do carpentry? I say no to all of them things. I say no, I'm a decorator. But what I can do is give you phone numbers, because as we've been working, I've built up contacts and relationships with other trades. So now I'm able, if somebody says to me I need some doors hanging, I can say, well, I'll put you in touch with somebody else and they can do the carpentry for
And
me.
does that work then come back to you as well?
Yeah.
So what, with regard to materials, paint, wallpaper, etc., do you buy that, or does the customer
No.
find?
Now, the way we do things now, we supply all materials, and to my clients is that I believe I get a better discount than they will, and I can get their materials cheaper than they can. We have various accounts with Dulux, with Crown. That works out. They're paid monthly at the end of the month, so I can usually go in, do the work, take the materials, and at the end of the month, when I get paid by the client, I can go to Dulux and pay the bill.
So when you started out, was it the same then, or
No.
the clients provided the things
Yeah,
for you?
yeah. In the beginning, I always ask the clients to provide materials, which they're more than happy to do.
And if they're not, and they ask you to go out and find them as yours, the professional, so to speak, where should someone go to find, where's the best place to find paints, wallpapers, etc.?
B&Q is B&Q sell Dulux trade paint. Dulux and Crown paints are by far the best paints on the market at your standard budget money. There are other, Fired Earth, Farrow and Bog, they're more expensive designer paints if you like, but most paint you can just buy in B&Q.
And would you have put a markup on the materials, or just put them across as what is cost
No.
you?
In the beginning, when I was starting out and I just wanted work, I was quite happy to just take the money for the work that I had done and not make any money on the materials. Now I put a markup on it.
So what are the risks and problems associated with being a painter and decorator?
Well, I suppose the risk is if you're self-employed, you have to have work, because if you haven't got any work, you don't earn any money. So you need to be able to keep yourself in work, and that can be, especially in the economic climate at the moment, that can be quite difficult. So that is definitely a risk. Another risk is that you take on too much work and you're not able to fulfil your commitments. That's a risk, because it's very easy to say yes to everything and find yourself stuck. But other than that, there aren't a lot of risks. I don't see that there are. You know, if you go about this with commitment and honesty, I think you'll be all right.
So what about if you've got an unhappy customer, they're not happy with the work you've done? Would you not charge them? Would you redo the work? Would you come to some sort of agreement?
I've never had a customer that I've left unhappy. Or we've done work that that customer hasn't been satisfied with, and we've always put the work right, whatever that takes.
So do you get a lot of repeat customers?
Yeah. Yeah.
What about the work being the times of the day you might work and seasonality?
Well, we standardly work so at 8 till 5 o'clock, but we quite often find ourselves in school holiday season. Some of the contractors that we work for decorate schools and colleges, and they need to be decorated out of school hours. So we may find ourselves doing weekends, evenings, late. You have to work when the work's there, so we work kind of whatever hours that need to be worked.
And how do you set your price? I know, for instance, from when you started off and now, I know we talked about quotations. How do you gauge them against other people in the market?
There's a guide for painting and decorating. It's called the CP guide on the internet. You have to have a dig around for it, because it's not readily available. But the CP guide is the average price set per area per metre. So you can go through the CP guide and you can look at the southwest, and it will tell you the prices for a door, the prices for a wall, the prices to hang some wallpaper. So every individual item that you may have to price, because you go in a room, you think, I've got to paint the room. The ceiling costs a different rate to the wall. The door costs a different rate to the door frame and the skirting.
So with regard to your pricing, how do you compare it to other people in the market?
There's a guide called the CP guide, which I got off the internet, which explains very clearly what price is acceptable per area for individual things. So the price of a wall, the price of a ceiling, the price of a door, the price of a door frame is all listed, and obviously the prices are more expensive in places like London than they are in Bristol. So you get the area guide, and from that I know roughly what to charge, and the charge will include a material cost and a labour cost. That way, if I follow those prices, I'm sure that my competitors will be close, so we'll be in the same ballpark.
So for instance, if you were just setting out and you want to get some experience, you might look at those prices and maybe reduce them to get the work, or?
If I was setting out, I would be looking. I wouldn't be doing a commercial work, so I would be looking to work from. I would decide how much money I wanted to earn each day, and I would go to a job and think that job will take me 4 days, and I would charge what I think is worth for 4 days.
So you mentioned then about different prices. Are they different prices for domestic?
Yeah.
Compared to say subcontract and commercial work?
Yeah. Most people that decorate on a domestic level work on a day rate. Most people that work for a commercial work per metre, per linear metre for skirtings and door frames, and per square metre for walls and ceilings. The two different jobs are completely different. Most people don't really cross over from one to the other. We do both. We do both, and the reason we do both is because I started in domestic and kind of just escalated into commercial. Most of my friends that are in commercial work don't go near domestic work, and vice versa.
Right. And do you find people are price sensitive? Do you ever find yourself having to change the price?
Yeah, always. Most people expect you to be able to knock some money off the original price you give them. Most people expect a bargain. So when you go to somebody, whether it be a quantity surveyor that works for a national company, they expect to be able to knock you down. Or whether it's Mrs. Smith who lives at number 42, she expects a bargain as well. So that kind of goes in beforehand. That comes with experience.
Right, so when at the start, when you were getting paid, obviously, were people paying cash?
They were, yeah, and that was where one of my problems come from. I was being paid cash, and because I didn't really understand business, I'd put the cash into my bank, and then at the end of the year, when it comes to doing a tax return, I kind of tried not to be quite as honest as I could, and when I had to give my bank statements over, it was all there in black and white. Now I ask to be paid either by backs direct into a bank account from an invoice or by cheque, and then there's no room for it to be a problem then.
Well, and so how much do you think, say somebody's starting out as a painter and decorator, how much would they earn in a week?
An average decorator in this part of the country, in Bristol, looks to earn £100 a day. Now, you have to take your tax off of that, so a decorator is looking to take home £400 a week for a 5-day week. That's what I pay all of our staff. If we get a job where I can earn more money and I can ask them to work for a price, I might say to them, that room is worth 300 quid, and if you want to kill yourself, you can do it in 2 days and earn an extra day's money.
So with regard to your marketing, you mentioned earlier if you drew up your own flyers to start off with, what other forms of advertising have you done?
Well, we used to put cards on the boards in Asda's and Sainsbury's, places like that. In my local corner shop, they've got a board in there, in my chip shop. And I used to just pin my business card to places. We also done Yale.com, that they was advertising. You can advertise with them free for 18 months. So I got straight onto Yale.com and Thompson. They were both free advertising for us. After we'd been working a little while, we had a website built, and that was hosted. I mean, that cost a little bit more money, so I had needed to get some work done before I was in a position to do that. But obviously, with a website, you've got a much bigger target audience.
And since then, I guess web designers come on and people can do their own websites for free now.
Yeah, they can, yeah.
Which, would you have taken that option up back then if it had been available?
Honestly, probably not. I don't know anything about technology. I'd like to sit here and say, yeah, I would have built my own website in 5 minutes, but that would just be a lie. I don't know anything about that stuff. So for me, I needed to keep this simple and straightforward. I needed this all to be little steps, little progression.
So what about the good old-fashioned way, networking? How important is that to you?
Now I do breakfast networking, and I always have. I'm part of a group that we meet every Thursday morning at 6:30. We have breakfast. There are 40 different company directors that sit around a table, and we pass business around. And before this interview, I sat down with Kit, and I said to him, "There's possibly an opportunity for somebody that you know that I might be able to help with." I think networking is fantastic.
So as a lifestyle, being a painter and decorator, are you happy in your work?
Most of the time. Most of the time I really enjoy my job. I like being able to go into a tired old property and make it look fresh and nice and clean. I love that. I also enjoy my work. I'm quite good at it. So for the most part, I like it. There are days when I hate going to work. I get up in the morning, I haven't had a particularly good night's sleep, breakfast doesn't go right, traffic's mental on the way to work, I get to work and I hate every minute of it. But I think that's the same for everybody in work. You know, I'd say for the whole, I really enjoy going to work.
So do you think it's a hard job, an easy job?
I don't know, I've got nothing else to compare it to. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that.
Easier than jail?
Oh, definitely easier than being sat in prison. Being sat in prison was no fun.
So if you want to take a bit of time off, how does that work?
Well, being self-employed, well, as we said earlier, the obvious drawback is if you're not at work, you're not getting paid. So if I want to have time off, I have to accept that I'm not going to be paid for it, which means I either need to have worked really hard for a little while and saved some money so that I can have some time off, or just take it on the chin as unpaid. But that's fair enough. You know, I understand how that is before I go into it.
So for somebody setting up now as a painter and decorator, maybe they just left prison and looking to start a new life, what of mistakes would you advise them to avoid? What mistakes did you make?
As I said earlier about the taxman, the biggest thing, the biggest stumbling block I can see for anybody making would be not putting their tax money away and coming unstuck at the result at the hands of the taxman.
And as a tip, the tip that has given you the most success with you?
Do your best. Do your best for your clients. Do the best job you can, and if you say you can be finished on a Friday, be finished on a Friday.
So now, quickly going back to, you mentioned that you were sent to prison. So what was it that sent you into offending, and what was it that finally made you stop that cycle?
Right, I was born into a life where both my parents were crooks. From the age of 10, we had the police kicking the front door in. Nobody in my family ever went to work, so I was never expected to have a job. I was expected to follow in the family career, you know, which is what I done, and that started off with me stealing cars and earning money however I could, and it progressed all the way through the different crimes to me running in places with a balaclava. And I never realised that as a person I had any value, personal value. And it wasn't until I started going to work and I could do something on my own for somebody and they would pay me money at the end of it that I realised that I personally had value. And my life into prison was easy. Being in prison wasn't particularly difficult for me. I've served 8.5 years in prison today, and I just got to a point where I was sick and tired of the same revolving door of promising myself that on release I would change everything and not knowing how to change it, not being given any different, okay, do this. So this project that you're doing, I think, potentially could be fantastic. And comparing it to my life now to my life then, there is no comparison. I haven't been nicked now for a decade, which is the longest period in my life without being nicked.
So we've shown you the escape routes, we've shown a pack that we produced. How do you feel, what's your opinion on the pack?
I think it's great. I think anything that you can do that can show somebody who doesn't have hope that there is hope, I think is fantastic. And the way that the process that you've set off in now, that you're asking lots of different people to come and tell you how they did it, proves that it can be done. If you go in with, I think you said you were going to interview 10 people. If you have 10 people with 10 different trades and you show it to somebody, there's got to be hope there for someone. Someone's got to be able to sit there and think that could be me. And if you manage to get through to one person, I think that's a massive success.